Tuesday, August the 10th, and it's a pretty morning, a good morning. I think we're starting to see the turn where the temperatures are leveling out, low 90s and nice mornings, and so enjoying that kind of weather now. I think the hottest part is past us, perhaps. This morning I want to make you aware of a couple of prayer requests that have come up. One, Paul Shirley had knee replacement yesterday. Understand he's doing well with his recovery, and so be praying for Paul as he recovers from that. And then Jim Bohannon, I believe on Thursday of this week, is going to be having shoulder surgery again. He'd had shoulder surgery sometime back, and there's an infection there, so they've got to go back in and redo that surgery. So be praying for Jim and Dorothy as she takes care of him. And I want to update you on Brenda Hammonds. I believe it is the case that she does have a blood clot in her lungs, so be praying for Brenda as she recovers. David told me yesterday that they had said she had pneumonia, but they're not quite sure with that. So be praying for Brenda Hammonds as she's in the hospital right now. And Donna Faust is still recovering from COVID. I think she still is in the hospital, but I haven't gotten an update today on that. So with those things, and then lastly, would you really pray for the Petruska family? Constantine, they do have a match for his transfusion, his bone marrow transfusion, but it appears as though that individual had hepatitis when they were younger, so don't think that match is going to work. They're going to the national database to find an exact match. So be praying for them. They are under so much. Just lift up that family, and if the Lord lays on your heart to do anything for them, I'm sure they have some financial needs, then I encourage you to do that. But we are putting our trust in Jesus, and old hymn came to my mind this morning that I'm not sure if I've ever even done it on one of the daily devotions, but maybe I have. It's What a Friend We Have in Jesus. What a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear, all because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? Never be discouraged. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Can we find a friend so faithful who will all our sorrows share? Jesus knows our every Are we weak and heavy laden, covered with a load of care? in Jesus. I'm thankful that man, we can consider him our friend and our Lord at the same time. He sticks closer than a brother. Um, I just love the words in that hymn. This morning we're looking at John chapter 2 as we finished up John chapter 1 yesterday. And John's going to record for us a miracle that Jesus had performed that are not recorded in any of the other Gospels. And sometimes people ask the question, why didn't the other Gospel writers record it? Well, probably because they were not there. And John perhaps was the only disciple that was there. But it's when Jesus turns the water into wine, his very first miracle that he had performed. And I'm just going to read the text and then come back and make some comments for us on the text. And begins in verse 1. On the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. And when the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus answered her, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." And his mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. And Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim, and he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast," or the host of the feast. So they took it. When the master of the feast tasted the water, which had now become wine, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, when the poor wine is given afterwards. But you have kept the good wine until now." This, the first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana in Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and his brothers and his disciples, and they stayed there for a few days. Several things. First of all, the people ask oftentimes the question, why did Jesus do this? Why did Jesus turn water into wine? And as the story accounts, the water that he had changed into wine was good wine, meaning that it would have had plenty of fermentation, meaning that it was the best of the wine. And usually someone would give out the good wine first because it was very expensive. And then after people had a few glasses, they would bring in the bad wine, and at that point it wouldn't matter to everybody whether or not they were drinking good wine or bad wine. But John does tell us here that Jesus had said to his mother, "What does this have to do with me? My time has not come, or my hour has not come yet," meaning my time to be revealed as the Messiah had not come yet. Now evidently, Mary may not have recognized at this point that Jesus was in fact the Messiah. But she had known from what had been prophesied over her womb when she was pregnant with Jesus. She had known that she had conceived him by the Holy Spirit. It was not natural conception. So she knew that there was something miraculous. And she tells Jesus, they're out of wine. And Jesus was saying, "My time has not yet come." At that moment, he didn't realize that it was time for him to be revealed. We have to remember that Jesus, though he was fully God, he was God, very God, he was also full humanity. That mystery of God, Jesus being both God and human. And there were certain attributes that he had laid aside during that time. People are telling me they can't hear me. There were certain attributes that he had laid aside at that time, and so it was not until the Father would have revealed to him that it was time for him to be manifested. So there's several things we see about Jesus in this miracle that he had performed. Number one, we see that he displayed his glory, meaning that he displayed his honor, he displayed his dignity, and it was in that place in that time that he displayed that. The second thing that we see about Jesus and his attributes, and by the way, these are only attributes that we see of God himself. And so it's a mark that John was making reference to and pointing out the fact that Jesus was in fact God, that he was full deity. And so we see the power that's in Jesus as God. Only God could have performed this miracle. We know that water contains two elements, hydrogen and oxygen. But when you look at wine, there are far more elements that are contained in wine. Wine contains yeast. Wine contains carbon. Wine contains grape as well, a completely different element than water. And when you think about what it would have required for Jesus to have taken water, H2O, and turned it into a substance that was completely different than what water is. Wine is not just grape juice poured into water, but he turned it into wine. A physicist by the name of Cliff Lewis writes this about what it took for Jesus to turn the water into wine. He says, at a molecular level, the water, basically hydrogen and oxygen, was changed into wine that contained sugars, yeast, and water, which contained carbon and nitrogen along with oxygen and hydrogen. Thus, by changing water into wine, Jesus demonstrated his authority over even atomic structure of atoms by commanding oxygen and hydrogen atoms to disassemble and reform into other atoms of different configurations. He goes on to say this, the amount of energy that it would take to perform this atomic deconstruction and reconstruction is staggering. This intermolecular energy being released is the source of the explosive energy of an atomic bomb. However, since Jesus caused the wine atoms to come back together, he would have had to have put this astronomical amount of energy into the atoms in order to make them reconstruct. To do so without any visible energy transformation of the liquid. This indicates a mastery of natural law far beyond our current comprehension, and he accomplishes it with no physical exertion. What Dr. Lewis means here is we don't even have the technology today, as much as we understand about the atomic nucleus, to be able to do this. Jesus transcends natural law, and it goes to reason that he transcends natural law because he is God, very God. All of natural law is subject to him. Our universe is governed by natural laws that God put into place when he created the universe. But God, being the creator of that, has power over that. And I think of this miracle that Jesus did, and I think there is nothing that is impossible with God. God willing, there's nothing that he cannot do that is beyond his power and his capability. And so that tells me that in my life, it tells you in your life that God has the power to intervene, God has the power to act, but it's all according to his will. And our place is to be subject to that will and trusting God in the midst of life. That we trust him. That's what a walk of faith is that we trust God. And we may ask God for certain things. We may ask God for miraculous things. And yes, God does still perform miracles, but only according to his plan and his will. What God desires most from you and I is our trust in him. I want to point out the containers that were used to perform this miracle. They were washing jars that were used ceremonially to cleanse the outside of the body. And here Jesus takes that which was used to cleanse the outside, and he transforms it into a substance that has an effect on the inside. This would be the first time that Jesus would begin making reference or some indication that it's not the outside that he's just concerned with. God is concerned with what's inside. Jesus up the ante on the law, if you will, where he said that you said that you're not to murder your brother, but I tell you, if you hate them in your heart, then you've already committed murder. Jesus said the law says not to look lustfully after a woman. But I'm telling you, if you've lusted in your heart, then you've already committed adultery. You see, man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. Jesus said that it's not what goes into a man's mouth that makes him unclean or defiles him, but it's what comes out of the mouth, because what comes from the mouth proceeds from the heart. I find that too often we even measure our own standard of righteousness by the outside. And what Jesus is concerned with is the heart, what's inside. He railed against the Pharisees and called them whitewashed tombs, that on the outside they looked very good and very clean, but on the inside they were full of dead men's bones. Meaning that it's the heart, it's the inner condition that God is concerned about. Out of the heart proceeds all manner of sin, Jesus said. But the beautiful thing is that when we are born again, when we trust Christ, that Jesus doesn't just clean us up on the outside. He's not concerned about that. His concern is what's in the heart, and he gives us a new heart. And let me tell you, what proceeds from the heart is a true indication of our righteousness, that God has made us right with Christ. We're in right standing with him. So back to this miracle. There's a foreshadowing here of so many things. We see it's on the third day of the wedding. Jesus would rise again on the third day. We see that Jesus is the bridegroom at the marriage of the Lamb with the bride, meaning the church. We see that that Jesus would rise again on the third day. So there's so many foreshadows in this very first miracle. And back to the question, why did Jesus perform this miracle? Why did he turn the water into wine? Simply this, because the Father told him to. We find in John chapter 5, verse 17, I think, that Jesus is very truly, I tell you, that I do nothing unless the Father tells me to do it. So at that moment, God the Father determined that it was time for Jesus to begin to reveal who he was and what his purposes were. God's always, always, always on time. He's never too early and he's never too late. But today, reflect on this miracle and what took place and what had to take place in this miracle. And don't get caught up on the miracle itself, but get caught up in the magnitude and the glory of Jesus. We worship an incredible God. So incredible that I'm not sure that we can really fathom how incredible he is. Well, I pray the Lord gives us an opportunity today to plant a seed of the gospel in somebody's heart. You know, I was reminded yesterday that planting of the seed is us just really telling our story of how we came to know Christ. Think through how you came to know Christ. Get that in a story form and look for somebody to share that with today. And if we recognize that there's a seed of the gospel that's already been planted in that person's heart, that God would give you the opportunity to cultivate that seed. And if God by his mercy would allow us to participate in watching somebody being saved today, boy, wouldn't that be a great day. Pray for me as I go this morning. I shared with you yesterday the young man. I'm going to be picking him up this morning to take him for coffee. And so just pray that God would work in his heart as I begin a relational discipleship process with him. And pray and ask God, bring somebody into my life that I can pour into, that I can disciple them, teach them how to follow Jesus as I am learning and growing how to follow Jesus. God will answer that prayer. I pray the Lord blesses you and keeps you, his face shine upon you. Have a great day. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning.